When love found me, have you ever felt completely invisible, like no one truly sees you? That was me, just going through the motions, thinking love was something that happened to other people, not to someone like me. But then, everything changed in a single moment. This is the story of how love found me when I least expected it, turning my world upside down in ways I never imagined. It all started on an ordinary Tuesday. I was rushing to work, lost in my thoughts, when our eyes met across a crowded subway. There was something about him, a warmth, a spark, that made my heart skip a beat. I looked away, convinced it was nothing. But fate had other plans. Days later, we bumped into each other again, and this time he smiled. That smile. It felt like the universe was whispering, "Pay attention, this is important." What followed was a whirlwind of emotions, awkward conversations, stolen glances, and a connection that grew deeper with every passing day. But just when I thought I had it all figured out, life threw a curveball. A secret from his past resurfaced, threatening to tear us apart before we even began. Was this love real, or was it just another illusion? I'll never forget the night everything came crashing down. The tears, the accusations, the painful silence. But that's not where the story ends. Because sometimes love doesn't just find you once, it finds you twice. What happened next? Well, that's a story for another day. Stay tuned. The thing about love is, it never shows up when you're looking for it. And honestly, I wasn't looking. After my last relationship ended in disaster, I'd convinced myself I was better off alone. But then there he was, James. His name rolled off my tongue like I'd known him forever, even though we'd only just met. He had this way of making me laugh when I didn't want to, of noticing the little things no one else did, like how I always fidget with my coffee cup when I'm nervous. At first, it was just small moments, coffee dates that stretched into hours, texts that came right when I needed them. But the more I got to know him, the more I realized there were pieces of his life he kept locked away. He'd change the subject when I asked about his family, or his phone would light up with calls he never answered. I told myself it wasn't my business. Until it was. One rainy evening, I saw a name flash on his screen. Sarah. The way his face tightened when he silenced the call sent a chill through me. "Just an old friend," he said, but his voice was too casual, too quick. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then the next morning, a message popped up on his phone while he was in the shower. I didn't mean to look, but the words burned into my memory. "We need to talk. She knows." Who was she? What did she know? The man I thought was opening up to me suddenly felt like a stranger. But the scariest part? I wasn't sure I wanted to find out the truth. Because what if the truth meant losing him? The next few days were torture. Every time James smiled at me, I wondered if it was real. Every time he pulled me close, I questioned whether his arms were a safe place or just another layer of the mystery. I tried to push the message out of my mind. She knows, but it echoed in my thoughts like a warning. Was I just being paranoid, or was my gut trying to tell me something? Then Sarah called again. This time I answered. The moment I heard her voice, soft but urgent, my stomach twisted. "You need to talk to James," she said, "before it's too late." Before I could ask what she meant, the line went dead. My hands shook as I deleted the call from his log, guilt gnawing at me. But I had to know. That night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through his things. His drawer held nothing unusual, just receipts and old photos. But then, tucked beneath a stack of papers, I found a key with a faded address label, a storage unit across town. What was he hiding there? The next morning, I followed him. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't stand the silence anymore. He didn't go to work like usual. Instead, he drove to a part of the city I'd never seen him in before, parking outside a small, run-down apartment building. My heart pounded as a woman stepped out to meet him. Sarah. She looked nothing like I'd imagined, older, tired, and the way James hugged her. It wasn't romantic. It was desperate, like he was holding on to something or someone he was afraid to lose. I should have left. But then I saw the little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5, her tiny hand gripping Sarah's as she stared up at James with wide, uncertain eyes. And in that moment, the way he looked at her, like she was the most precious thing in the world, hit me like a punch to the chest. Was this his daughter? His secret family? The pieces were there, but I couldn't make them fit. If he had a child, why hide her? Why lie to me, unless the truth was worse than I could imagine? I drove home in a daze, my mind racing. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from James. "We need to talk, tonight." 3 sentences. That's all it took for my world to tilt again, because whatever he was about to tell me, I knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same. That night, I sat across from James at our favourite cafe, my hands wrapped tightly around my coffee cup, like it could steady the storm inside me. The usual warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by something heavier: guilt, fear, maybe both. "I need to explain," he started, his voice rough. The truth spilled out in broken pieces. Sarah wasn't an ex, she was his sister. And the little girl, her name was Lily, his niece. But the story wasn't as simple as a hidden family. Sarah had been in an abusive relationship years ago, and when she finally escaped, she and Lily disappeared to stay safe. James was the only one who knew where they were, the only one helping them rebuild their lives in secret. "The call you saw, she knows. It meant Lily's father had found out where they were," he said, his jaw tight. "I've been trying to protect them, but I couldn't tell anyone, not even you." Relief crashed over me, followed immediately by shame. I doubted him, spied on him, all while he was trying to keep his family safe. I reached for his hand, tears burning my eyes. "Why didn't you just trust me?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. James's face went pale as he read the message. "He's here. We're leaving now." We ran. The drive to Sarah's apartment felt endless, every red light a torture. When we got there, the door was slightly open, the apartment eerily silent. My heart pounded as we stepped inside. Toys scattered on the floor, a chair overturned. Then, a whimper from the closet. Lily was curled inside, trembling, her tiny fists clutching a stuffed bear. Sarah was gone. James scooped her up, his voice shaking as he whispered, "Where's Mommy, sweetheart?" Lily just buried her face in his shoulder, too scared to speak. That's when I saw it. A note taped to the closet door. "You should have stayed out of this." The room spun. This wasn't just about Sarah's past anymore, this was about us. Whoever took her knew James had gotten too close to the truth, and now so did I. James turned to me, his eyes begging for help. And in that moment, I realized love wasn't just about the happy moments. It was about standing in the fire together. "We'll find her," I said, squeezing his hand. But as the police sirens wailed in the distance, one terrifying thought lingered. What if we were already too late? The next 48 hours were a blur of police reports, frantic phone calls, and sleepless nights. James never left Lily's side, holding her close as if she might disappear too. I watched them together, the way she clung to him, the way he whispered promises that everything would be okay, and realized this was the real James. Not the man with secrets, but the one who would move heaven and earth for the people he loved. Then, the break we'd been praying for. Sarah had managed to slip a text before her phone died, a gas station 2 towns over. We got there just as the sun was rising, and there she was, bruised but alive, standing by the payphone. The moment Lily saw her, she sprinted across the parking lot, and Sarah collapsed to her knees, pulling her daughter into her arms like she'd never let go. James stood frozen for a second before rushing to them, and I hung back, my throat tight. This wasn't my family, but in that moment, it felt like maybe it could be. The police caught Sarah's ex trying to cross state lines. He'd been desperate, reckless, and that was his mistake. With him behind bars, Sarah and Lily could finally breathe. But the real change, it was in us. James didn't shut me out anymore. He let me in, scars and all. And I learned that love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when things are messy. A year later, we stood in that same cafe where he'd first told me the truth. Lily, now giggling over a cupcake, kicked her feet under the table while Sarah scrolled through apartment listings, her first real home in years. James squeezed my hand and nodded toward the door. "Walk with me." Outside, the autumn leaves crunched under our feet as he pulled something from his pocket, a key. Not to a storage unit this time, but to a little house with a porch swing and too many bedrooms. "I was thinking," he said, grinning, "maybe we could fill them." I laughed, but my eyes stung. This wasn't how I'd imagined love finding me, in chaos and fear and second chances. But maybe that was the point. Love doesn't always come easy. Sometimes it's the thing that stays when everything else falls apart, and me, I'm holding on tight. End screen. If you believed in their love story, hit like and subscribe for more real-life moments that remind us love is worth fighting for.